All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Jan Mauro's deeply fascinating history, World Cup legends, to really understand how a single football tournament essentially became a cultural clock, one that actually measures human history. We aren't just going to sit here and look at a list of match scores or catalog a bunch of trophies. Oh no. Instead, we're going to explore the sheer nerve, the absolute genius, the villains, and the intense heartbreak that totally define this unbelievable global phenomenon. Section 1. The 4-year clock. Rhythm of the World Cup. Every 4 years, the world stops to watch a ball. You know, it's kind of an absurd thing when you say it out loud like that, right? Grown adults literally weeping over the movement of a leather sphere across a rectangle of grass. But the World Cup isn't just about the matches. It's humanity temporarily agreeing to care about the exact same thing at the exact same time. It's like this single shared story, told in a language that's understood absolutely everywhere. And because it only happens every 4 years, that anticipation just compounds. By the time it finally arrives, even the smallest moments feel enormous. It becomes a cultural clock. We literally measure our own lives, remembering exactly where we were and who we were with by the 4-year beat of this tournament. 13. Now that quaint little number represents the total number of teams that competed in the very first World Cup down in Uruguay back in 1930. Think about that. Nobody was even sure this grand idea from FIFA President Jules Rimet would actually work. I mean, for European nations, traveling to South America meant spending weeks at sea on steamships. Only 4 European teams made that massive crossing, and players were literally out there jogging laps on the ship's deck just to stay fit. From those incredibly humble beginnings, a tournament half the world completely ignored, the greatest show on Earth was born. Moving on to Section 2. Geniuses and Ghosts. Myths of the Tournament. So some teams win the World Cup and others, well, others completely change how the game is played forever. The Dutch master Johan Cruyff and his 1974 Netherlands team introduced this concept called total football. It was a dizzying philosophy where defenders could just surge forward, attackers could drop back, and the whole team functioned as a single fluid organism. And here's the kicker. Even though the Dutch famously lost that 1974 final to West Germany, their philosophy completely seeped into the bloodstream of the modern game. It just proves that you don't actually need to lift the trophy to achieve absolute immortality in this sport. And then you have these moments of sheer, unadulterated individual magic. 10 seconds, that is exactly how long it took for Argentina's Diego Maradona to score the 1986 goal of the century against England. Receiving the ball deep in his own half, he just accelerated right through the center of the pitch, beating defender after defender. His balance was just perfect until he finally rounded the goalkeeper and scored. It was a display of pure sporting perfection, literally condensing absolute genius into a 10-second sprint. But here is where the story gets deeply, deeply fascinating. Just 4 minutes earlier, actually think about that margin, just 4 minutes earlier in that exact same match, Maradona illegally punched the ball into the net. It's the moment he famously dubbed the hand of God. This duality perfectly captures the extreme ends of human nature on a single stage. In a span of less than 5 minutes, one single man showcased both cynical deception and breathtaking artistry. It's almost as if the sport wanted to show us, in one single afternoon, every single thing a human being is capable of. And you know, we saw a strikingly similar duality exactly 20 years later with France's Zinedine Zidane in the 2006 final. Zidane opened that match with a penalty of just breathtaking audacity, a delicate little chip right down the middle under immense pressure. Yet, in the final minutes of extra time, in what was literally his last ever match as a professional, he transitioned from that grace into a shocking moment of violence. He headbutted an Italian defender and ended his entire career with a red card. It's a really powerful reminder that the intense pressure of this clock doesn't just forge heroes. It seriously tests human frailty. Okay, Section 3. Agony of the margin. Devastating heartbreaks. 200,000. That absolutely staggering number represents the estimated crowd packed inside the massive Maracanã Stadium back in 1950. Brazil, as the host nation, only needed a draw to win the World Cup, and the whole country was basically already celebrating. But then, Uruguay's Alcides Gija scored a late goal to make it 2-1. When that ball hit the back of the net, the largest gathering ever to watch a football match fell into this eerie, absolute silence. It was a national trauma so deep that Brazil actually abandoned their white kits after that day, adopting those famous yellow shirts just to leave the ghost of 1950 behind. But football has a really cruel memory, doesn't it? That national pain echoed 64 years later when Brazil hosted the tournament again in 2014. Facing Germany in the semifinal, the hosts were just completely dismantled, 7-1 in front of their own weeping fans. It was this rapid, merciless collapse that got christened the Minorazo. And it proved, without a doubt, that the immense weight of hosting, of carrying an entire nation's expectations on your shoulders, can crush a team just as easily as it can carry them to victory. And all of this brings us to what has to be the cruelest lottery in all of sports, the penalty shootout. After 120 minutes of completely exhausting play, months and months of preparation all come down to a lonely walk and a single kick. It is straight-up psychological torture disguised as a test of skill. Honestly, no image captures this better than Italy's Roberto Baggio in the 1994 final. After practically carrying his entire team through the tournament, he stepped up and ballooned his penalty right over the bar. The lasting image from that year isn't really the Brazilian celebration. It's Baggio standing all alone in the center of the pitch, hands on his hips, head bowed, completely undone by a margin of inches. Next up, Section 4, the global game, shadows and expansion. Now, as a neutral explainer, it is super important to point out that this tournament doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It sits squarely inside the real world. Over the decades, the World Cup has frequently intersected with complex geopolitics. We're not taking any sides here, but facts are facts. In 1934, Mussolini used the tournament as a propaganda showcase. In 1969, qualifying matches exacerbated existing tensions between El Salvador and Honduras into an actual conflict. In 1978, Argentina's victory occurred against the very dark backdrop of a military junta. And that 1986 match between Argentina and England, it carried the incredibly fresh, heavy context of the Falklands conflict. Ultimately, the World Cup holds up a mirror to humanity, reflecting historical realities without taking sides. But, hey, the tournament is also a massive force for incredible unity and global expansion. Just look at this progression over time. For decades, it was basically a duopoly of Europe and South America. But slowly, those boundaries broke open. In 1994, it went to the USA. In 2002, South Korea and Japan hosted Asia's very first tournament. In 2010, the vibrant sounds of the Vuvuzela welcomed the entire world to Africa. And looking ahead to 2026, we're going to see an unprecedented 48 teams spanning all across North America. It really is the steady, inspiring march toward a tournament that truly, finally belongs to the entire globe. Which brings us to Section 5. Ultimate Redemption, the Qatar 2022 Final. Talk about the ultimate script. The 2022 final gave us exactly that. On one side, you had Lionel Messi, 35 years old, widely considered the absolute greatest of his generation, and just desperate for that one missing crown that would cement his legacy in Argentina, right up there alongside Maradona. And on the flip side, you had Kylian Mbappé, the incredibly explosive young French heir who was absolutely refusing to politely step aside for the old king's coronation. Just think about the sheer statistical weight of these two absolute legends trading blows on the biggest stage imaginable. Messi scores, seemingly putting the game away for good. But then Mbappé answers with 2 goals in roughly a minute? It was insane. In extra time, Messi scores again, but Mbappé steps right back up to the penalty spot and completes a World Cup final hat trick to tie it all up yet again. It ultimately took a hyper-dramatic penalty shootout for Messi to finally achieve peace and lift that coveted trophy. It was a finale of just unbearable tension that perfectly encapsulated the agony, the ecstasy, and the relentless ticking of the World Cup clock. And so, that brings us to the horizon. With an unprecedented 48 teams heading to a massive North American tournament next, millions of fans from nations who have literally never even qualified before now finally have a chance to dream. So here's what we have to ask ourselves. Out of thousands of players and millions of fans, whose defining moment, whether it's a massive triumph, a devastating heartbreak, or a stroke of pure genius, will become the next measure of our lives? Keep your eyes on the pitch, folks. You really aren't going to want to miss a single second.